you can't serve everybody. And if you don't do one thing right, then you're not really doing anything at all.
This is the Drinking Buddies Show, where we explore food, craft beverage pairings, and the entrepreneurs and tastemakers behind them. I'm Frank Rogers, founder of Drinking Buddy Artisan Snacks. And on today's show, I'll be chatting with co-founder of Whale Face Beer, Brendan Megowan, hearing all his stories of entrepreneurial struggle and getting his insights into what it takes to be a successful craft brewery. Brendan Megowan grew up comfortably in Rancho's Palo Verdes and was not on a trajectory to become an entrepreneur in the craft beer scene. That is, until a family trip to Jamaica and his encounter with Red Stripe. I chatted with Brendan to find out more about his passion project, Whale Face Beer, and what brought him to this point. With many formational experiences in both Northern and Southern California, Brendan is a craft brewer with a complete dedication to his favorite beverage.
I've been in the pursuit of starting a brewery for about 10 years. So I've been running a burger chain and a brewery for other people, for these guys in Sacramento. Had this brewery that they wanted to build up in downtown Sacramento, and they put like millions of dollars into it, and it took like 5 years to construct it. So that project was pretty all-consuming for quite a while. But while I was running that project, I was organizing investors and putting together a plan and scouting locations and dealing with brokers. And so this has been definitely the same project, long time coming. The name Whale Face came about 3 years ago, just through a trial and error of what we thought was a word that represented everything that we wanted out of a brand, which is easy to say, easy to spell, not confusable with anything else, unique, representing the local area, having to do with nature and wildlife and animals, and still be fun and personable. So we kind of just threw spaghetti at the wall with words and concepts and different ways of attacking a name. This name came out of what my younger brother used to go by his nickname, that his name was Cowface. And he got that name. He got that name from a friend of his younger brother, 4-year-old kid or something. For some reason, walked up to him and was just like, "What are you looking at, stupid Cowface?" And he called him a Cowface. And so from then on, his friends thought it was so funny. So they called him Cowface. And we were kind of going around our brain because we thought that was a cool name for brewery, Cowface. We decided to switch the cow over to whale to be more local and not confuse people and have them think we were an ice cream shop or something.
Sure.
Like that.
Yeah. No, I could see. But that's funny, though. Cowface. Brutal.
Yeah. Stupid
Brutal.
Cowface. You know, the first thing you do when you come up with a name is you got to look up on Urban Dictionary and see what actually means.
That's right. Yeah. Be careful.
Yeah.
Find out.
So,
whale face is what?
Actually is like, it's a face of expression of like you're dumbfounded, like you can't believe the other person is that stupid.
Brendan had a comfortable childhood, although even then, there were challenges.
I grew up in the same house all my childhood in a pretty sheltered neighborhood. It wasn't until I was really an adult out there living in the real world that I realized how lucky I was growing up. It's absolutely beautiful up there. I had an interesting childhood in high school, but I never thought that I'd get into brewing. When I was 14, I went to a college party and they put me on a beer bong that was like two stories high. Went into 4 different sections. And me and 3 friends went on this giant beer bong, and they put pitchers of beer up in it. They turned on these beer bong spigots, and my 2 buddies couldn't handle it after a little bit, and then they turned off their valves, and that just increased the water pressure and pumped beer right into my stomach. I threw up that night, and I actually couldn't even drink beer throughout my entire high school career. So I guess that was a good thing. Yeah, I guess that was a good thing. It kind of kept me out of trouble.
So you had brothers, and do you have any sisters?
I have an older brother and a younger brother.
So 3 of you always getting in trouble?
It was me getting in trouble, yeah.
And what did your parents do?
My dad he was in commercial real estate, and he actually was the chairman of BOMA for a little while, Building Owners and Managers Association. But he got cancer in 2002 when I was in high school.
Yikes.
And he was terminal then. They say only give him 30 days to live, but now he's still kicking. He's just a machine. He has Parkinson's now, and He's had a tough time with his health over the years, but when he lost his career through commercial real estate, my mom stepped up and got a residential real estate license, and she sells homes in Palos Verdes now with my dad assisting her as a broker. Now they're kind of like a powerhouse residential real estate team because she's real talkative and in with the neighborhood, knows all the schools, raised 3 boys in the town, and knows everybody. And he can support her with a lot of the logistics and accounting and broking.
When we return, Brendan shares his experience in Jamaica and how he overcame his childhood trauma with bad beer. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And if you'd like to support us, you can order a one-of-a-kind Japanese artisanal snack exclusively from our website. Go to www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and click on Shop.
My family went on a family vacation to Jamaica the summer after I graduated, and I was about to go to college. And I told myself, I got to get over this thing. I can't. The drinking age there is 18. I just started drinking Red Stripes. Before you know it, I was drinking like 10 Red Stripes a day. And
where'd you go to school?
I went to school in San Luis Obispo when I first graduated high school. I just went to junior college and just went up and smoked weed and drank alcohol and didn't do anything productive with my life. And then I moved back down to live with my folks because I was amounting to nothing. And I started working as an EMT at the horse races, Santa Anita, Los Alamitos, Hollywood Park. It was a super awesome job, and I was trying to get into real estate at that time. So I was going to Fullerton College, getting my grades up. I was able to do homework while I was on shift as an EMT at the horse races. Basically, you know, they have a race. Say they have 12 races in a day. They'll have a race every 18 minutes. So we would actually drive the ambulance up to the starting gate. The race would go, ambulance would go, and we'd step on it 50 miles an hour, drifting, getting squirrely around the corners. Then we'd park, and I'd get to read a book and do homework for 18 minutes. And then I became a security guard at the new resort in Palos Verdes. One, I guess it's not new anymore. Terranea Resort. Yeah. I actually was supposed to be transferring to a university, but it was a special year where they didn't have the budget for transfers. So they literally sent me a letter. You're accepted, but you got to wait a whole semester. So I just spent 6 months waiting to get into school as a security guard at a hotel.
Brendan made a move that would start him on his path to being a craft brewing expert.
And then I moved up to Chico. My mom went to Chico. She basically gave me the confidence. She told me, I know you can get a job. I know I had bartending experience, serving experience. And she was like, go up there and try to get a job. If you can't, I'll help you out a little bit until you can get a job. She basically told me it's awesome going to school there. It's an amazing experience, and I think it'd be awesome for you to have it. So I went up at age like 26. And while I was there, I got a job managing a beer bar for a burger chain. That was the only beer bar that had quality experimental craft beers in town. As most beer nerds know, Chico is dominated by Sierra Nevada. They're the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. They make amazing beer, and they are gigantically and wildly successful. So every bar in Chico can actually buy Sierra Nevada beer directly from Sierra Nevada's self-distribution. They only do it in the town of Chico. Distributor companies usually take 30% of the sale price as a royalty or as a fee for their service. When you self-distribute, you don't have to pay that 30%. So it's a little work around the 3-tier system that the state government created to assist small breweries with connecting with their local communities, not having outside large breweries come into their area and shove them out with price points. So they have an instant 30% advantage over their competition because they're not forced to go with a distributor. So when they come and they sell beer locally in their own town, they've got 10 different varieties. Any beer bar in Chico could buy 10 different flavorful, fresh Sierra Nevada beers right from the brewery down the street, and the keg price is about the same price as Coors Light. Every bar I went to, instead of being full of Coors Light, even the like raunchiest sports bars, dive bars and stuff, you go in there and they've got 6 different varieties of Sierra Nevada, an IPA, a Kolsch, Dortmunder, Brown. Although it was very, very awesome with the Sierra Nevada beer, the product of that was that any other beers from San Diego or Los Angeles or San Francisco or Petaluma and those areas that are doing excellent stuff, those beers were going for about $140 to $160 a keg for an IPA. And they just couldn't compete with the Sierra Nevada lock on that price point. So even though there was delicious, wonderful Sierra Nevada all around town, I was a beer nerd moving up there who loved going to bottle shops and visiting breweries and trying all this new stuff. In 2009, the whole thing was just budding. They hadn't come out with like milkshakes or hazies or any of that stuff. They were just trying to figure out how to utilize hops with less boiling hops and more crisp, bright flavors towards the end of the experience when you swallow it instead of having back of the tongue bitterness. 2009, it was just like people were still making super bitter bombs, and there was just a few players in the game starting to come with that bright freshness. Pliny's one of them, Sculpin, Racer 5, which now tastes like a malty beer, but back then it was kind of cutting edge. None of those beers that were pushing the envelope were being purchased up there. Because they weren't purchased up there, the distributors didn't have stock. So I moved up there. I thought I was moving into this beer mecca, but my whole movement that I was into down here in Los Angeles, it was gone. It was not up there anymore. So I was lucky enough to get this job at the beer bar called Burgers and Brew, and within a couple of weeks, I was arguing to purchase some beers and stuff. They had locations in Davis and Sacramento, and they eventually had one at the Sacramento airport. And now we have the flagship brewery in downtown Sacramento called Sacrament Brewing. It's owned by two brothers, and one of the brothers had spent some time at a Belgian monastery when he was a child. There are two Lebanese brothers, Catholic Lebanese brothers, and one brother was sent to Saudi Arabia when he was a child, and one brother was sent to France. The brother that was sent to France spent some time at a Trappist monastery. He became an engineer, and then the brother that went to Saudi Arabia became a chef in San Francisco. And eventually they linked up and started the business. It's a burger place with half-pound Niman Ranch grass-fed burgers, and the beer part of it, which is a creative list of chosen curated beers, focusing heavily originally on Belgian bottle beers. They had a full line of bottles, 100 bottles, even Allagash Black, Allagash Curio, and even down to like Deus, Chimay, even Japanese beers. They had Hitachino and 4 different varieties of Hitachino. And they were able to create this price point and a premium on their product line that was competitive in town, even though their source pricing was much higher than they could have if they just went all Sierra Nevada. So they made the conscious decision, we're just going to charge a little more. We're going to create a unique premium experience in town, and we're going to stick with our plan and only carry 2 Sierra Nevada drafts and have the other 14 drafts their other set plan. And they didn't have any plan for any rotating drafts at the time. They just had this set plan of a mix of all the different normal craft beer categories, Boot Amber and Hoegaarden and Blue Moon even. So I convinced that dude to rotate and start getting some of the more creative ones in there. And before long, I was in charge of doing all the buying. And I didn't get thrown into that job overnight. It was months and months of jostling. No, you should do this. You should do that. I don't like that. This beer sucks. That's not fresh. Get from these guys. And it really started with one guy. He got 2 rotating beers, and he had them on a jockey box. They were expensive beers, too. He thought it was fun because it was something special in addition to what he already had. And he was all excited about it. Lucifer was one of the kegs, and the other keg was a double IPA anniversary half barrel from Anderson Valley. The Lucifer 5-gallon was like $200 for a 5-gallon beer. And he's serving these on jockey box. And I told him, this is the most expensive product you have in the house, and you're serving it in an improper party way. You know, this
right.
Keeping the
Red
kegs
cups.
Warm. And then yeah, exactly. And the customer sees that, and it's not professional, you know. And I wrote it to him in an email, breaking down the gas laws of CO2 and how the pressure has to be applied correctly. Otherwise, volatiles are messed up and it foams out and you create beer loss. And I sent him a link to the draft quality manual and everything. Because I saw my opportunity to take over this program because he really didn't know what he was doing with it.
You basically gave him a PhD thesis in beer.
Right. I wanted to overwhelm him with logic and theory. He ended up letting me choose the 2 beers on the draft wall that I thought were the lowest quality that I wouldn't mind disrespecting to put on the jockey box so we can get the special rotating beers their rightful place on the wall. We moved Newcastle and the apple cider, Whiter cider. We moved those to the jockey box, and we got the special beers up on the wall. Then he let me choose my first keg, and he's like, if this one keg sells, then you can start choosing for these 2 taps. Not doing the whole thing, just choosing these 2 taps because they already had their beer list set. I chose Flying Dog, Raging Bitch. the Belgian IPA. I chose that at the time because all the IPAs, or most of the IPAs of that time, around 2009, were very bitter on the back end. The Belgian IPAs, the Flying Dog, I believe, uses the Le Chouffe yeast. It's a very estery, fruity type yeast, and it finishes very dry, so it's really refreshing, but also fully complex, kind of a little bit spiced, aromatic to it. They use that on this beer and then dry hop with Amarillo hops, which works with that fruity aromatic to create a really wonderful experience. And again, it's not too bitter on the back end. It's really drinkable and easy to swallow. The beer sold out like crazy, and people didn't even know what it was. The servers were giving tastes of it. People were impressed and shocked. Oh, I want that new fun thing, I became in charge of these 2 taps, which became 4 taps, which became 12 or 14 out of 16 taps, became rotating, and then they tore the whole system out and installed 60 taps, and now 45 of them are rotating. Originally, he went from, no, I want my franchise to be replicable and cookie cutter. I want to sell a franchise and be able to have someone else replicate it very easily. And he finally realized that franchises themselves are a nightmare. He opened 1 franchise, and I don't think he'll ever do another one. That kind of experience has trickled down into my management of breweries and brew staff as well. If you're trying to have something made that takes 10 years to be a master at it or make it excellently, and you're expecting to hire someone who's going to be expected to execute that product in 2 months, in 1 month, logically, breweries can't afford to be training people for 6 months to a year to 2 years, which is why it's so difficult to have large productions of intricate crafts like this that take actual experience and skill. You can't just follow a recipe. You have to know the product. So like with yeast, you can't just harvest a certain amount of yeast out of the bottom of your tank and then pitch it into a beer and it's going to behave the same way. Yeast is always going to be behaving differently. The bottom of the cone has dead yeast that they are probably 6 inches in the cone in a 30-barrel batch, or probably like the first foot of the cone at least is going to be all dead stuff. And when you open the valve, it all looks healthy and nice. But if you know what to smell for and if you know what to taste for, then you can open it up. And sometimes you'll open it up and there'll be a little bitterness to it and a little bit of off smell. And it'll look good, but I'll run some to drain and just not take it. And then you sit there and taste it a little bit by little, and the bitter taste is so bad sometimes that you got to go and stop it, go eat a cookie, and then come back and then taste it, and that bitterness goes away, and then it starts to taste a little fruity. The other day, I opened up a tank to harvest yeast, and as soon as it came out, it was beautiful. I just let a little bit out. It just dumped. Like, it smelled great. It was foamy. It was happy. So I didn't dump a lot. So I was able to keep more yeast, which allows us to have better control of our fermentations for our plan moving forward. But you can't just write it down for your employee. Harvest 2 gallons of yeast, please. Open the valve and pull it for 2 gallons.
Right.
You have to harvest as much yeast as you can without being wasteful, without harvesting poor yeast. And for that, you have to have the experience of the taste and understand the product that you need and the needs for it. So selling beer in a restaurant setting is much the same way, because if servers don't know how to articulate the product, then they can't ever hope of selling that product that doesn't have international recognition. People know what Budweiser is in Newcastle and Blue Moon. But if you're trying to switch them from Blue Moon to Allagash White, then that's the conversation that needs to happen. And if you are promoting Blue Moon right next to Allagash White and you're selling both, then that's even a more difficult conversation. And that's something that happens at restaurants that sell a lot of beer that are owned by owners that don't really fully support the movement. I found myself as a craft beer guy pushing this program. Well, the beer bar actually still sold Budweiser and Coors Light and stuff in bottles. And they still supported all the larger craft breweries, which had become larger than the type of movements that this movement was built on. When you're competing with the enemy in your own house, it's very, very difficult. Even down to the point where, like, when we had our brewery open, we had a Type 75 license, which was a full liquor cocktail license. The cocktails came all with distributors, and they came with big brands, Kettle One, and all these guys. And these guys would bring in signs and chalkboards and coasters and all this stuff. And we had our own coasters. We wanted to make our own signs. We should be portraying our branding and creating the environment for folks. That not only sends a mixed message to the customer, it sends a mixed message to the servers and the staff who don't know where their loyalties are at. Am I pushing Kettle One, or am I explaining to people the wonders of beer and why it's a superior product to any other alcohol? If we own a brewery and we're invested with hundreds of thousands of dollars in brewing equipment, then we should be promoting that product to get the return on that investment.
Brendan took me through the pitfalls of trying to capitalize on craft beer without being totally dedicated to it.
So I've had run-ins with quite a few folks over the years that own restaurant groups and that want to get into the brewing industry and that want to supplement their restaurant group with a brewery. And I think at this point, I'd probably recommend against it because of the conflict of interest with the restaurant portion of it and the beer production. It's a very slippery slope and a rocky shoal to go on promoting your own brewery inside of a restaurant that sells other alcoholic products. If your restaurant is willing to go full bore and say, we're only serving our beer, this is a brewery like Pizza Port, just pizza and beer, and then boom, we're a restaurant group with breweries. That works because they're selling Pizza Port beer. When you have the products from other groups in your house, the server doesn't know who to promote. Do they promote the beer that is stacking up in the cold box that the manager wants them to get rid of? Do they promote the beer that the brewer's really excited about showcasing? Do they promote the beer that the owner says that they make the highest profitability off of? Or do they promote the beer that they think the customer is going to most enjoy? 99% of the time, in my opinion, the server is going to recommend the beer that they think the customer is going to enjoy most. Because at the end of the day, the restaurant owner already paid them. They're not going to get any extra money from the restaurant owner for going above and beyond and selling what they want them to sell. They're going to do what's right by the customer because the customer hasn't paid them yet. And the customer has a wonderful experience, then they throw down a fat tip. So that's first and foremost on all these guys' minds because money talks. Pushing craft products sometimes is starting a mild argument with customers. Try Hoegaarden. It's the original Blue Moon. It's far superior, and you're going to love it, I swear. That's the server going out on a limb with their tip. And if the beer is not good, then maybe that person's not going to be as forthcoming with the tip. Maybe it's not like a conscious decision even. Maybe it's just subconsciously they didn't like the recommendation. They didn't have a good time. They wish that server wouldn't have had it interrupted them and told them about this other beer. They wish they were just talking with their friends and all that. But let's say you only had Allagash White and you didn't have Blue Moon as an option. Do you have Blue Moon? No, we don't have Blue Moon. We got this. It's even better, actually. I think you're really going to love it. That's okay, fine. And there wasn't an argument over it. There wasn't a convincing thing. It is what it is. You're going to be happy. You're here at a craft spot. It's what we do here. But if you have to offer the Hoegaarden when they just wanted a Blue Moon, you're starting an argument over no reason. So the servers generally don't do that unless they're uber nerds on a mission. They'll say Blue Moon, even though they know that we're selling Allagash White and maybe we have our own the wheat beer that we brewed in-house. I want you to sell the wheat beer that I made in-house. The owner wants you to sell either one because he makes some profit off of both of them, but he prefers you sell the in-house one, but he doesn't really care. He wants the customer not to be argued with. His mission is to get the customer every option that they want. And then the server's trying to figure out what they're going to do for the customer. So what happens is half the time when people are coming in with maybe an open mind, but not blazing curiosity, they just get steered toward their old reliable. Where if that old reliable wasn't available, then they would have just instinctually been okay and actually enjoyed the new option. So when the servers are faced with selling that product that the customer doesn't want, essentially they start pushing Blue Moon. When you're working your butt off to create these other wonderful things, yes, it's good to appeal to a wide variety of people, but you can't serve everybody. And if you don't do one thing right, then you're not really doing anything at all.
You'd be surprised how much Long Beach and Sacramento have in common. Brendan shared his love for both cities.
I trained the staff. I designed a brewery for him in downtown Sacramento. Beautiful $5 million project with 15-barrel brew house in the basement, 4 30-barrel fermenters. I sell brewing equipment as well, and through my manufacturer in China. I got these tanks custom designed to be tall and narrow. So they stick up through the floor and stick up into the atrium space, and there's walls, holes cut in them with huge windows facing the Memorial Auditorium. So when you walk out from the Memorial Auditorium after just seeing a show, you literally look up and you see these beautiful tanks, rooftop patio, lights, flames all across the rooftop edge, fire pits on the roof, rooftop bar, 3 bars. It was a pretty amazing project.
I've been to Sacramento a few times. It's a little bit similar to downtown Long Beach, and it's not that big. It's kind of approachable, and it seems like
Well,
there's some new businesses going in there.
yeah, it's funny that you say that because I live in Long Beach, and I was living in Long Beach when I was running the brewery up there. I was spending 10 days up there and 4 days down here. It was pretty brutal driving the whole time. I would have to leave it at the drop of the hat usually. And if I got extra time down here, I would take it. If I got stuck up there, I'd need to be able to do it. So I couldn't book flights, otherwise they'd be too expensive because I was leaving at last minute. But when I was there, the parallels were uncanny. I live in downtown Long Beach, but I really enjoyed it going around Sacramento too. Their craft beer scene has just exploded. Craft cocktails, restaurants. I think a lot of the artistry that got shoved out of the Bay Area and San Francisco through some of the pricing has pushed a lot of those guys to Sacramento. There's quite a bit of San Francisco transplanting. So it's cool. They're getting some Michelin star quality restaurants now. The population of Sacramento is actually about the same as Long Beach, 500,000 people. And geographically, they're surrounded by water on the west and south side, with a sprawling urban neighborhood to the north, and to the west, the wealthier suburban area with a midtown in between, with where the artists live and all that. It's crazy how the city's designed literally the same.
Brendan takes us through his first experiences as an entrepreneur and all the challenges that come with it.
As soon as I graduated from Chico, when I was up there, I was working as the bartender and eventually the bar manager. I was going to school for entrepreneurship, their small business management program, which was super, super valuable. I really am glad I went through that program to be able to take all your business courses with like-minded entrepreneurs and collaborate. And the guest speakers were all entrepreneurial minded. And it was a wonderful experience. And they didn't teach us how to be corporate managers. They taught us how to be at the very top, in charge, buck stops here. You got to figure out the path and steer the ship. When I finished Chico State, I was at home for Thanksgiving, and there's a guy that I knew, a local brewer that was starting a brewery. He found an investor, and he was building the Dudes Brewing Company in Torrance. He wanted me to be his assistant brewer for that project. So I took that job and walked into a construction zone, and actually the first 3 months of my job were constructing the brewery, and long hours, 7 days a week. It was like being in a battleground. That's how I learned a lot of the logistics, though, of setting up a brewery. And that's why I have the credibility to be able to design the brewery up in Sacramento. And that was an excellent experience. Unfortunately, the brewer there, in my opinion, didn't make good beer at all. And his processes were very flawed. He refused to remedy it. And we clashed with what we believed was the standard of quality. I ended up leaving them and not working. That did set me back quite a bit, because when you have a short stint at a job like that at a brewery, especially when you leave having a little bit of bad blood with that employer, sometimes other breweries get scared by that. Word travels fast. People talk, and if anyone just hears a whiff that you were a problem employee, then, oh, I don't want him coming over here and making waves. I've actually since found out that a lot of the breweries that I interviewed with when I was trying to get jobs, I was going into these interviews saying, like, oh, I'm all about quality. My friends are lab technicians here in Nevada. I know about VDKs and diacetyl and all the biological processes of fermentation. And like, I can test and taste and see if it's good. I told my story about not gelling with the other brewer because he didn't want to do things properly. And I wasn't down with that. I was either going to do it right or not do it at all. And I realized that these breweries that I was interviewing with, that they're production breweries. They're not little restaurant brew pubs with some uber passionate dude selling small batches and trying to win the GABF. These guys are pumping out pretty big volume, and they need the volume to go, and they need it to sell, and they need to meet production schedules. And they can't be having some hotshot kid from the cellar calling them saying, hey, I think the diacetyl level is a little high. I think we should give it an extra 2 days in the tank.
They don't have that kind of time.
We can't afford to pay for 2 days in the tank. Shut up, kid. We're selling it. So it was interesting. I was racking my brain. I had been dedicated to brewing 100%, and I was so passionate about it, and I couldn't get a job for any of these mid-sized regional breweries. And talking to more and more of employees that worked for those mid-sized regional breweries, and I understand why I didn't get hired. I should have just said, I'm a company man. I'm here to work.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Put me in, like I can
throw
move
me in the game, coach.
I'm here. That's it. I didn't have to do all that fluff.
Despite some hiccups in finding another gig, it wouldn't be long before Brendan was back at building breweries.
I started bartending at the Four Point Sheraton at LAX. It wasn't 6 months that I was there when I got a call from the burger guy that I worked for up in Chico. And he said he's building a brewery. He remembered that he liked working with me, and he's interviewed a bunch of people, graduates from UC Davis and stuff. And he wasn't really impressed. And he asked if I'd work with him and help him design a brewery and design and run and staff and create a brewery for him. So I thought it was an excellent opportunity. And I kept bartending while flying back and forth to Sacramento, meeting with architects and city planners and plumbers and everything, and essentially designing and constructing this brewery while living in San Pedro. And that brewery had all kinds of construction delays and all kinds of trouble, and lots of lessons learned on the construction of that project as well, which took almost 5 years. I think 5 years to construct it, while I was basically home brewing and getting recipes ready and doing experimentations and going to all the conferences and craft beer seminars. And I didn't get the professional experience that I would have liked, but I got all these other experiences that people with full-time production jobs and obligations didn't get. I got time to travel to the seminars, travel to all different breweries and meet different folks and network in ways that the regular working stiff isn't able to do. I even was able to run a brewery in Huntington Beach that lost their brewer. We were on a construction delay. It was 3 months more. And then the owner of Beer Paper LA actually recommended me for this emergency save job. Daniel Drennan, he's a really great dude. He's been a public figure in the beer industry, supporting us for a long time. He's very industry friendly, and he's here to help. We love him. But he recommended me for that job, and I went down there and was able to run my own 10-barrel brew house for 2 months while I was waiting for the 15-barrel to be built in Sacramento. So the previous years leading up to that, I had been experimenting with all different kinds of recipes on the homebrew level. And it was really nice to be able to experiment with them on a larger professional level before I got to run my own program. So that ended up really well. And that brewery is called RIP in Huntington Beach. The owners there were just so helpful and nice. And it's right on the beach. You can see the ocean from the brew deck. All the customers are so cool. The beer's phenomenal. They have had a really lucky string of excellent brewers. And it's one of those things that goes to show. And when you inspire people and let them do what they do best and give them what they need, then wonderful stuff comes out.
Brendan thought he was on his way to opening his own brewery, but it's never that easy.
When I quit in Sacramento, I was going to be starting Whaleface Beer, my personal project down here in Long Beach. I had an investor drop out. We lost quite a bit of money right before we were about to sign a lease. The investor, he didn't decide to drop out. He apparently was unaware that he didn't have access to this money, and that was a trust fund. And this is a couple weeks before we're going to sign a lease. So I was looking for new options other than building my own brewery and tasting room. That cost roughly in the $1 million range. So now I was faced with considerably less investment, startup capital. I needed to figure out an alternative production method, because the most expensive part of building a brewery is the brewery. And so I was exploring various options of funding, and it was just grueling work, meeting with investors and approaching rich dudes and trying to get hundreds of thousands of dollars from their pockets. And if you've ever pitched a business plan to somebody who actually has money that is up for grab, you know that it's emotionally draining, to say the least. They just sit there stone-faced. He's not sold. I need more. And they're just like, yeah. Sometimes they're just like, no.
Not interested.
Yeah, and before they say they're not interested, you're looking at this blank face for half an hour while you're trying to give this spiel,
Although Whaleface Beer hit a major roadblock, Brendan came up with a creative solution to getting his dream off the ground.
I didn't go to Strand for a job. I went there to see what we could do about getting Whaleface production in Strand. When I got there, Joel, the owner of Strand, had one brewer who had been there for only 2 months and one cellar guy who didn't have any previous brewing experience. He'd been there for 6 months. And he was doing all the brews himself with this other brewer. When I walked in there, he just looked so exhausted. He told me about how he's doing, and I told him how I was doing and everything. And it became very apparent that I have the time and energy, and he's got the big time need for me to come in and help out brewing. As soon as he told me the situation, I was like, man, I'll throw on the boots and come help you out. Do you need anything? Just let me know. Just give me a call, And he called me a couple days later, and he had me come down. And I pretty much explained to him that I have my own business and my own dream, my project that I'm moving forward on, and I'm happy to help. And if you'll consider allowing me to have my production in this space, then you'll have my attention to build a program here and make some excellent beer and help hire staff and train and inspire a next generation of brewers that can be the house brewery staff to brew beer for you and my brand. That's kind of our deal that we have. I take care of his brand, and he's going to give me the opportunity to create mine. I have a tasting room that same tasting room that we were negotiating the entire time. That tasting room is still in play. It's still open and available. And I'm going to be brewing my production for Whaleface at Strand. But the timing of it's a little up in the air. I'm still not sure what the regulations for brewery tasting rooms are going to be. And I'd be a fool to sign a lease without understanding what the rules of the playing field are. It's a little bit frustrating because every day I wake up and just think, have I got to figure it out yet?
Right.
It's going to work. And we're working on shutting down the street. So if we can get that in front of our unit, then that can be extremely helpful and double or triple our capacity. But how long is that going to be for? If I'm going to sign a 5-year lease and then that ordinance goes into effect, the way it's written in the state is that they can revoke it any time. And as soon as COVID's over, then those things are going to be revoked. So if I sign a lease and then they revoke the street permit, but they still don't relax the occupancy, then
right.
There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of clouds in the future. And the one thing that's the shining ray is that people are always going to drink excellent beer. We make excellent beer. We know how to do it. We know how to continue to do it. As long as we support our farmers and treat the product with respect and treat the customer with respect, then we're going to be able to do what we do under any circumstances and any conditions. If we can't get the square footage in this location to do what we need to do, we'll go somewhere else that has the square footage. We could get shipping containers and put them in vacant lots and stack them together and create garden spaces and outdoor beer gardens and stuff like that. Have plenty of outdoor space with each group sticking to themselves, games, ping pong, darts, and all that stuff. You could have sanitizer right next to the ping pong table, like you sanitize your racket before and after you use it. And darts, same things. Have right next to the dartboard, you have little sanitizer things. Please spray the darts down, If this thing doesn't go away and there is no vaccine and we do have mandatory social distancing and limited seating capacity for years to come, we'll be ready for that too. There's nothing that can stop people from getting their beer. There's nothing that can stop people from socializing and enjoying time with their friends. It's going to open up. It's going to happen. We just need to find the conditions under which that is possible.
Be sure to follow Brendan Megowan on Facebook and Instagram. His Instagram account is Philip McGrowler. You can also follow Whaleface Beer at Whaleface Beer and check for updates on Brendan's project. Coming up on the Drinking Buddy Show, I'll be chatting with Jeff Lozano, brewer at Ballast Point and host of their podcast dedicated to the craft. Jeff shares what makes Ballast Point such a great place to work at, how he went from the medical field to craft brewing, and 3 beer pairings just in time for summer. Thanks for listening to The Drinking Buddy Show. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your buddies. Check out our latest artisanal snack offerings at www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Take care and drink well.